favorites is, shall I sing?
Yes.
Long-haired preachers, just based on a hymn. Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right, But when asked how about something to eat, oh, to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet, oh, so sweet. You will eat, by and by, in that glorious land above the sky, way up high. Work and pray, live on hay, you'll get pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie! And they had more verses too, you know. But music has been very important in terms of organizing, by the way. But another dramatic example of what happens when people organize. And of course I go back to Joe Hill. Joe Hill was a major labor leader, late 1800s, early 1900s. And he came from Sweden, and he became a mine worker, organizer, and so on, and was executed in 1915 in Salt Lake City on a trumped-up charge in terms of killing somebody. But he was also a major songwriter, and there's a new red book. He was a member of the International Workers of the World, and he really pushed for the importance of people organizing and so on. Well, it was tough, you know. My father was unemployed, my mother was, was struggling and so on. We had a tough time, but you survive the best you can. My father was very active he was a painter, trust me. And so he was active in the union, which was very corrupt then, and he was in the Brooklyn local, and Jake, the bum, was the business agent, and they put him in jail for corruption, right? My father was part of the progressive group within the union, and he was an officer for a while. He was elected by the progressives. He was the secretary-treasurer of the union. But Jake was just unbelievable. They put him in jail for corruption. He comes out of jail after a number of years, and the other characters re-elect him as business agent, So it was fun and games. Look, many times my father came home and was beaten up, he injured and all that bad stuff. So, well, the history of unionism is the whole history of organizing to make a difference, and the historical perspective is very clear. You had in the 1800s, you had middle 1800s and later, you had workers who were being exploited. You had immigrants, you had natives, you had African American. It was just unbelievably bad, and working conditions were terrible. Child labor, women being exploited. And have you ever looked at the Jacob Riis photos? Well, he depicted what was going on Lower East Side, what was going on here in New York in terms of the exploitation, the terrible living conditions, and so on. And the only way change began to take place was as people began to organize in terms of unions. Well, that was all part of this whole business about recognition of a social contract and the importance of a social contract, so that people would be invested in, but they would return that investment in terms of their productivity, in terms of the work that they did, and the contributions that they could make. It was initially because some people saw this as an opportunity to take advantage of the workers. Because this was a growth industry at the point. And some did that, and while the workers got some benefits, the corruption was for those leaders who were corrupt to benefit tremendously from all of that. And many of them did, Hoffa, the Teamsters and so on. There was an accommodation. Employers recognized the need for having peaceful, working conditions. And tragically, what we have seen, of course, is the deindustrialization of America. And that is what accelerated the whole business of the weakness of the labor movement, because those who were involved in corporations, etc., they figured, well, we don't have to continue doing this. We can export the jobs to low-wage countries. And as I describe it, this is a giant fraud perpetrated on the American people, that if you lower taxes for corporations and wealthy people, they will invest and create jobs. So you have to ask the question, where is the evidence that they have done that? Big push over the last 40 years has been expansion of unions in the public sector, so that people who work for city government, county government, state government, and federal government too, have had unionization and negotiations of better working conditions there, pensions, retirement, that kind of stuff, which had not existed before. And that was very significant, very important. Well, as I said, I was a kid, I was 10 years old, but it was very dramatic. I knew about unions because my father had been a union member and active in unions and struggled against corruption. And it was very dramatic because you saw that there were people organized, they were trying to meet, and they wanted to make a difference. This was 1935, this was after the taxi strike that had taken place and the corruption that was there too, and the importance of people getting together and saying, hey, look, we need to organize, we need to maintain our commitment, because that's the only way we're going to resolve the issues, and we have to fight the corruption. And that existed in many unions, and so workers who were more progressive, who understood the issues, who did the economic analysis of what was going on, were able to be successful over a period of time to minimize the corruption in many of the unions. The theater, arts, and so on were invested in. In fact, theater project. This one I remember too, because I read the Sinclair Lewis, It Can't Happen Here, and they actually put on the play, and they had companies traveling all over the country who were showing the play. I think more than 500,000 people, saw the play, supported the art. Dorothea Lange, who was a very famous photographer, Agriculture Administration was paying her to go and film and do photographs about what was happening. So that was major, major impetus. Well, theater has been, I think, very important in dealing with that, in dealing with critical issues. And I've been fortunate in that partly I made my fortune, partly I was taken when I was a kid, to see some major productions of issues around that. For example, racism and working conditions and so on. The Cradle Will Rock musical, the same concept. That one was really shaking, And Orson Welles directed that one too, by the way. Native Son, which I saw the original production. Orson Welles directed that. Canada Lee was the actor, and it was about racism and about exploitation and so on and so forth. And very dramatic production. Everybody was sitting in their seats, Canada Lee plays the role of Bigot Thomas, and he attacked this woman. He's in the basement, and he's huddling, he's frightened, and all of a sudden a whole group of guys dressed up like cops come running down the aisles, and everybody just jumped out of their seats because that never been done anything like that before, and you were just petrified as you saw that. but very effective, very successful, you know. And, oh yeah. Well, I think the lessons are clear. The lessons are clear in the fact that business and industry are not going to invest and create jobs for working people here in the United States, because their interest is only in making profit. And after World War II, workers and business worked together in order to expand the economy. But we're seeing a contraction of the economy. We're seeing the dramatic change in the standard of living as a result of that. One of the things that disturbs me is that people they're ground down, you know, and they don't feel any sense of opportunity or optimism or so on. And as I said, I'm mostly concerned about the young people. The lessons are clear, and we need to organize and make the difference and make the change. I mean, literally, we can create millions of jobs in the United States in terms of dealing with the collapsing infrastructure. But that doesn't mean they have to be public employees. You can contract with private companies to do that. We can create millions of jobs in terms of providing opportunities for people with creativity. You know, the arts, the music, the theater, you know, film, all that stuff. We create millions of jobs in terms of providing necessary services for people who need help. So, you know, we are in deep trouble, and that's why I still say it's a fundamental crisis in values, where we are devaluing people, and we're saying that the average person should have no sense of security and commitment that there are going to be services provided as they need them. You know, it's not there, and that's, I find, the most troubling of all, and that's what feeds, I guess, my healthy outrage on the one hand, which give me reasons every day, but also my pessimism, because I don't see that kind of militancy really taking place. And you know, the 99 thing that they're doing here and across the country, I think that it's positive in the sense of a focus, of identifying what the issues are, but the organizing is not taking place the way it needs to take place.
Long-haired preachers come out every night, try to tell you what's wrong and what's right, but when asked how about something to eat, they will answer with voices so sweet.